There we go.
Hi,
Hi.
nice to see you again. It's better.
Yeah. It's been a very long time.
Yeah, I think it was a year and a half ago, I think, that we spoke. And then I needed to, I don't know, do some stuff to kind of sense how to approach this in a way that feels true, but also intelligible.
Well, the true part I understand. I'm not sure that I've actually really, how do I say, scored well on the intelligible side of the equation. So
Oh my
maybe
God. I
we'll do
think,
something good.
if you think that you don't, then I'm screwed then, because
Ah.
I think you do a good job of that.
So you said you had some thoughts on what might be a good way, or both a formal, like a form or a way, and then seeds or content. And I feel like I'm happy. It feels right to me to actually just sort of give you the conch and then see what happens.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. It's a very new place for me to be in, to be driving this. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, because I'm also happy for for it to emerge in different ways. But I think I need to introduce you, because at some point this is going to become a podcast, and I haven't introduced other people before, and I was like, okay, that's a problem. So I'm just gonna now say, for the people that will be listening, that I'm talking to Jordan Hall. I'm really excited to be here with you. I might just introduce you through my lenses, and I don't know all the things that you do. You seem to be very prolific and do many things, but the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you and invite you to be a part of this, like, let's say, beginning scaffolding of this project, which I hope to be more than podcast, is one is because of the way that I see you engaging in conversation. That, to me, you do bring distinctions that I find really helpful, and you often make distinctions that I see them like opening the potential of the conversation at large. That's helpful as well. And I often see you kind of like holding the piece of the feminine in the dialogues that I see you participating in, which that I call the feminine. So being from the concrete relational aspects, or even breastfeeding you were mentioning in the last podcast I heard. And so from these perspectives, but also the mystery and the invisible and the sacredness of life. So, and all of that, I want to be in the beginning of this of this conversation. So yeah, that's why I thought of you. Do you want to say anything to that? And then
Well, what I would say is something like this, and it's interesting. I just realized that last night I was having a chat about this, or I was having a chat with my wife right after I gave her a back massage, actually. Um, what were we talking about? We were talking about, oh, that's right, the possibility of us building a house. And one of the things that she was really reflecting on was, as a value, was that, and that she felt like it would create an experience for our daughter, who's 4, of what my mom does or does well. But the context was, I think, was the key, which was that she had a frame, or at least she narrated a frame of not being notable. And I couldn't put up with that. So I had to, hey, you currently may be living in a frame where you put yourself down, more or less. But I just want to let you know that your daughter and I experience you consistently as doing amazing things, and the way that you just show up. And what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to take the notion of, let's just call it just being a mom. Put quotes around that. I would like to actually put that at the very top of the pyramid. That's the actual greatest thing that anybody could possibly do. And then to do that masterfully is the most difficult thing that anybody could possibly do. Masterfully. And that everybody who experiences it kind of realizes that, when you do it. And the reason why that comes up is that after we chat about that for a little bit, I said, well, that I have already found myself swearing something like an oath of fealty to the feminine. And maybe that's what you're picking up. The sense of the knight, not the bowing before. So I would, if that's something that you're seeing come up in our conversations, then I feel like maybe that feels like I'm perhaps doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful start. Yeah, I'll just respond to what you just shared, because that's exactly what I'm picking up on, and what your wife experiences. So I noticed a little bit of emotion arise just as you were telling the story, and what she experiences is a pattern. It's everywhere in the feminine, the female experience, not even the feminine, the female. So when I'm going back into running women's work, which I had stopped for a while because I was focusing on other things, and then I went back now, and I'm kind of like wanting to trial a collective of how do you call it, ecology of practices with women. But it's fascinating because it took me a long time, and I feel that too. I mean, it's not just out there, it's in here, and it's in, because what I see, if you imagine, and then I go back into the fact that women are cyclical beings, and the fact that we don't see that in reality anywhere. So it can bring it's almost like a performance contradiction or something. It's a weird place to be in, because as you cycle in yourself, and then you can see that like spoken by men, because men are better in doing categories. So for example, you can see like Peterson would say, like, well, after teenager years, you can see that girls, nobody understands why, but girls have more negative emotions. And then you can say also, then you have David Data talking about, women are more unsure and men are more sure. If you get all these threads of truth, I mean, there's signal there, but what they're actually pointing to is that the way that the truth is experienced from over here in a cyclical way is not what I see outside. And because of this disconnect, or that comes from the axial wage or whatever, I'm trying to keep up with all that kind of trajectory. But basically the line, so this project's called Fine Line Full Circle, because the line is what I see outside, is the progress is something like this, and I'm like this. So, and I didn't know I was like this. So this is the confusing bit, because what happened in the psyche of many women, I'd say the majority, is that we don't even notice we're cyclical anymore. Like it's the sacredness has been completely removed from that. And therefore, we just bring bits of it that are convenient to culture. So let's say, we have birth or pregnancy, still not in a great way, still really, not experienced as sacred as it could be. But we forget that these elements, the birth, pregnancy, parenting, then, the other rite of passage of the feminine, of the female physiology is menopause. All of this is part of a continuum of being cyclical and then stopping being cyclical. So this 40 years of a woman's life, like it's a bit crazy making to try to understand how to be in a world that actually doesn't reflect that back. And what happens is that we started trusting more out there than in here, and then we constantly doubt our experience.
Yes, I think I understand what you're saying, and I agree. This makes complete sense to me, actually. Say as sort of a hold on, let me see if I can get this. Oh, it's very tricky. What I'm seeing is this notion of connection or downness. In fact, very specifically, I'm actually seeing a field that goes out to infinity, and then it comes up, and it looks a little bit like a maybe a cone. It's quite elegant, actually. But then if you take the top of the cone and you slice it so that there's a gap between the two circles, and then so the bottom of the cone, let's just call that reality or nature. And then above the slice, let's call that the feminine. And then if I take that slice and then that cone, and then I take the very top of that and I cut that, something like the masculine. And the sense is something like there's a resonance or a harmony or a connection or contextualization, context connection, right? Complexity that the female body, I'll even just put it like you did in kind of a very concrete sense, is a complex, subtle instrument that is deeply woven with the actual real context that it's operating in. And all of these different cycles are tuning instruments to provide a variety of different perspectives on what's actually going on in the social and physical context, so as to provide steering or orienting basis for how individuals and groups can make choices, humans. The story is something like, if something's wrong with the water where our village is, the women should know first, right? Because they would notice a change in the taste or change in the way their body feels, and they would be very attuned to all those differences in how their body feels at a very subtle level, and would take those seriously because those are important signals. And what happens is that the men, then if the women are grounded, right, if the women are really connected to the ground, to the world, and to themselves, and then to each other, this creates a compass, right? It creates a very, very precise orienting basis that allows the men to know what direction is the right direction to go. So that's, well, I guess I said it in words, didn't I? But that was what I was seeing, and now I've said it in words. So I feel like that's a very supportable, like many, many different ways of thinking about a very supportable proposition. And then the way I've been calling it is I just call it the catastrophe. Right? So the thing that's been going on for several thousand years, right, it's a very long arc, has been a disruption of our ability to have that subtle context. Like we've been decontextualized and decontextualized and decontextualized, somewhat willy-nilly, somewhat highly recklessly, like absurdly recklessly, in so many, many ways. And so it's if you think about it in that fashion, it's what you said is of course it must be. And then I can imagine that if I am a being whose body is a subtle instrument, nuanced and sensitive, and it's sort of blasted with all kinds of noise, I'm going to be in the situation you described. One is that I will lose the ability to orient on the basis of the instrument, and then will alienate out to anything that can be provided as an infrastructure of what right choices looks like. And then you're screwed. And then you're in trouble.
Oh my goodness, yes. Then you're in trouble, because what you said to me makes a lot of sense, but also I was thinking, then it's fascinating because if women are disconnected, which we are, if you see, and I think I shared that with you when we first spoke, it's probably changed by now, but when I birthed my first daughter like 12 years ago, the rate of cesarean sections in Brazil was 85%. So it's very, very big. So not to say that we don't need those interventions, but like the amount of like we forgot that we actually birthed, and we forgot. And and then so if we are disconnected to that level, and then let's say men for the simplicity of it, but this impulse to act from the masculine, and these ideas and the courage to just go for it, right? So even like launching a podcast or something like that, I can even see how I take it too seriously. There's something like, oh my God, it has to be perfect. And I go like, I talk to friends and they just launch. They just like, just go for it, just whatever. And if it's a mistake, you just deal with it. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. That's very different than how it's like the cycles in itself, and it keeps making itself, unsure. And then, so it's a very interesting dynamic when it's not in homeostasis, because then you have this action-oriented one, but ungrounded from the source that could give its, like where to, and the where to doesn't trust itself anymore. So then, of course, then you have the catastrophe, as you point to, and I guess I suppose I was just gonna, because you said something about nature. Now maybe I'll stop here and see if anything is arising for you. Otherwise, I can.
No, please go. Keep going.
Yeah. So the nature aspect, for example, the rhythms of the earth with the seasons, with the felt experience of the seasons. So the cycle within a woman's body mimics that felt experience. So one way, like in this ecology of practices, one way that I'm saying that's like almost like practice 101 for women, it's like the very beginning to reconnect. For a lot of women, they forget how it feels, so then they need to look outside. It's like outside there is a spring, outside there is winter, outside, oh, okay, so then you put that in your body and it's like ovulation is summer, and then that's how a lot of women internalize it's from the outside to the inside. And then so it's like an inversion, because we kind of lost our ways to actually really feel into our bodies. But then after maybe a year, I don't know, for different women different things, but you notice women start noticing a pattern, and it's like, oh, after I bleed or I menstruate, that's the beginning of spring. Okay, so then, and it matches obviously with the hormones, of course, because that's the hormone dance. So then it's like, and then I'm more outside and outward, and then the opposite happens in the luteal phase. So it's like, it's then the deconstruction of the egg, and it's the deconstruction of my psyche, and the deconstruction of reality, and so much potential to see shadows, see yourself in a different light. But this has to be harnessed and worked with. And because of this removal, complete removal, we're not only not working with that, we're being completely had by it. And not only women, then men as well, because then, so it's almost like, so on a point of this, I think in the first conversation we had, I said something to you like, how can we play? Like, how can women play in this game of creating things together, new systems? And you're like, well, just come and play, and kind of like paraphrasing you lightly. And I was like, well, I was sitting with it. I was like, this is harder. Like, it's harder to, I can hear it. I understand what you mean. And from this body, it's a hard thing. And then, of course, that's what I was doing for this year and a half, mastering that, to kind of do this. But still, to most of my female friends, that's not what they will do.
Say more. Hold on. Let me see if I can figure out the thing that just came through. Gosh, I lost it. There was something really interesting there.
Do you want me to say, because I can say a little bit more and then see if you can, or I can just stop.
Okay, to the point. Let's actually use this as the point. The interchange we just had. So we're trying to figure out how to do this. And yeah, well, let me do my thing, like the thing that you invited me to do. So let me make some distinctions or notice like pieces that can maybe be pulled out to make it more clear. We have a disposition, which is to say we are individually and collectively creating a space that supports something. For example, if we needed to just sit here quietly and allow things to settle, we could. We are individually capable of it, and we are in a place of a relationship that also makes that possible. So something like disposition, and even more than disposition, conscious disposition, like an actual valorization. It's not just an unconscious disposition. We know that this is a thing that we may need to protect and to help, and maybe even defend if other thoughts or contexts come into play. And in the space that is made available, that space allows the sensitivity to be unfolded, I would say. Yeah.
So what's coming up for me as I hear you and I feel into this is that again, emotion arising, and you said protect and defend, and what comes up for me is like it's so exhausting to be like, when I birthed my first child, I had to be in a mode of protect and defend. I was just like, my body can do this and nobody will stop me, because everything was against me in the system, right? But my body needs to be relaxed to do that. I have to trust inherently. I have to trust that I can do that. I can open myself to my most vulnerable state. Truly, I can die, and I can trust that people protect me. So I can relax so that a baby can be born into this world in the most sacred way possible. And we have been failing to do that, but not just to birthing women. We have been failing to hold our young girls in this sacredness and go like, you are cycling, and that's beautiful, because you are reminding us of the rhythm of the earth. We're reminding us of the principles of letting go and grief and pain and death. Every month you're doing that, so I can remember. So we remember to do that as a civilization, so we can create from this place and not from this uninterrupted craziness.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing, I think it's important, really, to acknowledge that it's millennia of craziness. So we're talking about our great granddaughters. And we're talking about trying to create a lineage, which is to say something that produces something that produces something that produces something that may be far from here, well after we're dead. That space is really solid, and the woman who's giving birth is actually maybe even not that aware of how much has been done to recreate a space where that can be fully sacred. Okay. One, I think that's realistic, to be perfectly frank. So, and then two, it allows us to how do I say, simultaneously not just give up, given the immensity of the impossibility, but even to notice that it is our job to just be steering in the right direction and paddling. Okay. That's that. Hmm. Oh my goodness. Oh, I mean, but the complexity of that craziness, like I'm drinking water, right? It's probably toxic in about 15 different ways. And it's water. Just think how far, and every day gets even heavier on that front. I was reading about I think literally 15 distinct toxic events that are going on in just the West right now. So that's at the physical level. And the physical body, if you're sensitive and nuanced and listening, your physical body is going, hey, something's fucked, because it's right. So that's another part of the journey, restoring all the different elements. Oh gosh, I mean, come on, we can go on forever, but this is actually kind of nice because you can say, all right, well, then we have a direction. Less shit, like less crazy. Some things are obvious. Some things are actually simple. And the fact that we don't do the simple things, let's do the simple things. We don't have to win the whole thing all at once. We don't need to make ourselves crazy trying to sort of solve the whole big problem in a single generation. But maybe we can get the simple things done. Or at least move in the direction of discerning between what is a proper choice and an improper choice. I mean, even just that, it's crazy how small the wins we're going to have to chalk up as wins are. You spend a year and a half to be on this, to be doing this podcast, and I'm sure it was not small work.
What's the simple thing?
Well, I'll give you the simplest simple things, as you said. Pregnancy and childbirth is a very important thing. I'll be strong. It is not proper for 85% of births to be cesarean sections. I'll just be very bold. Look, no, that's not right. It's not proper. Yes, there are circumstances where medical intervention is healthy and good. And they are circumstances. They are not a whole way of doing things. I'll even be more very simple. What are these things called? Like mechanical wombs. There's an effort to create ways of fertilizing eggs inside mechanical devices and then bringing babies to term inside mechanical devices. That's a really terrible idea.
Wow.
I'll be very, very clear. I can go into as much detail as you like as to why it's a really terrible idea, but I'll put a very simple, like, bad idea. Don't do that. Error.
I think what reminds me is the argument that you were making about breastfeeding at Jim Rutt, at the conversation you had with John Vervaeke, in which you were saying something like, first you were pointing to the lack of continuity from our ancestors, and how nowadays women need to go to classes because we forgot that wisdom is not passed through. And of course, the same to birth. I hadn't seen anybody giving birth ever or breastfeeding my whole life until I had to do it, which is unnatural. But the way that you were pointing to like the complexity of the system itself, and how it has like 13,000 connections, and how the body of the mother regulates the body of the child, and the temperature, and the how did you name it? The like it's I can say reciprocal opening, but maybe it's like the child gets benefit and the mother gets benefit. And so I'd say the same to the womb. I mean, once we have the formula, which is okay, it serves some purposes, of course, but then we don't have all this incredible thing, which is the breastfeeding, mom and baby bond, and all the thing that happens. And this mechanical womb will do the same, because of course I imagine you have much more precision in that description, but the way that I learned to feel that baby inside of me, and the way that I learned to, it's really hard. I mean, it required a lot of me, but it's like, when everybody, because my second child was born at home in I was overdue. So
Mhm.
according to the medical system, I should have been induced. But my home birth midwife was she was a fighter, and she was like, no, you're fine. You know, like babies don't choose when to be born. And the time, I think that brings another distinction that you made in that conversation that I heard, the category error in which birth and all these female rites of passages are placed under. They're measured by scientific measures as opposed to mystery. And so then I had to keep checking in with my body, because I would notice when fear would arise, and I knew that if I was in fear, then my cervix would open and it would be really hard. So chances would be that I'd need to go to the hospital. So I had to keep like doing this work to go like, how much can I take from the outside pressure and metabolize this inside in a way that feels still safe for me and the baby to make this decision to birth at home. And yeah, anyway, I went on a tangent there, but
Well, let's build on that. So that notion of if I feel fear, then and I imagine, having some familiarity with women's minds, that your mind was actually contemplating lots of different things. Like, you know, would you have support? Would you have it in yourself what you needed to be able to be a good parent? How stable was the whatever the resources, the financial, whatever the way that you thought about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I'll say another simple thing. Human beings are complex. We're the most complex thing that has been created in the universe, as far as we know. And we're very difficult to produce properly, to raise. And when I say produce and to raise, I mean, from my point of view, the whole notion of conception is its own exquisite challenge, which has been radically decimated by the catastrophe. Then the whole process of development in utero is a whole massive, I mean, so many things are going on there, so much complexity. And we don't understand it. We're so far away from understanding what's actually happening, that the reckless hubris that is so characteristic of the catastrophe. I would like to say, stop being reckless and stop being hubristic. There's a lot going on there. And that's just the beginning, right? And all the complexity of all the developmental stages and all the things a human being actually needs to be really met by life so that they can grow and unlock the potential that is literally just ambiently part of being a human. Yeah. And if we can think about I'm going to say how far away our current context is from all of that, fear would be a very appropriate response. I mean, you have to actually gaslight yourself tremendously not to be overwhelmed with fear and anxiety, because our current world is so out of alignment with what is a proper context for the most important thing for humans to do, which is to produce good humans. But then the inverse, which is, okay, well, can we begin something like, I'm going to make a distinction here, because one of the bugaboos that I have is this thing called ideology. So a non-ideological, a trans-ideological way of recovering a proper way and using that as the axis mundi, right? The through line that allows us to orient what does a good, wholesome culture look like. It should be the case that any woman who chooses to can have children. And by the way, by definition, that means that your culture also has to do a really, really, really good job of bringing men into contexts so that women can actually feel very comfortable. Yes, that's a good pair. That's a mate. That's what I want to have children with. And all the rest, that there's family and community and intergenerationality and other kids that your child will be able to be growing up with. It feels good that that's actually happening, and that you can perceive and feel all the way down all the different ways that the right things are in place. And so, for example,
I don't know how to take the notifications out. I always, when I'm in a conversation and the beep, I yeah, when you were speaking, I was just noticing how decontextualized we've become and how it's very, very, I mean, if women's bodies, as you said, are these receptors, which they are, and I feel that very vividly. I mean, a lot of my friends don't have this narrative, so it's fascinating to see how they talk about themselves. Oh, I'm going crazy, because it's always in comparison to that which is linear or that which is other than this. So it's like, oh, you know, I can't go to a shopping center when I'm doing this because, you know, I just pick up on too much and I go crazy. So it's, instead of like, that's a good thing, let's use this pick up on too much. Let's harness it, you know, that's a power. So we're so far removed. So we're decontextualized, and that really shows up in a woman's experience of her life. And then you have these moments in which we're trying to bring healing, but still in the decontextualized, because we try to bring healing in some elements of birth, but then decontextualized of, you know, so for example, just bring the notion of the rites of passages that happen in a physiological way for a woman. So there is this notion that a woman awakes up to herself as a woman in her first bleed. So therefore, as a rite of passage, she will internalize culture in that way and say, what is it to be a woman? What do I need to be a woman? And that which is initiated in her first bleed is that which is going to give birth, unless she sees that. And many of us don't. Therefore, this culture that starts at 13, 12, shows up in the birth altar, you know, as that which, like, I had to recoil, like I couldn't show myself as that which cycles. So how am I going to trust my body, that body that I have been squeezing? You know, and 15 years later, 20 years later, I had to trust it. So then you have the second rite of passage. You have women then really, because it's out of context, you have women then, if they can't birth naturally, you have them then again cycling themselves and judging themselves, because that's what we do. And it's like, no, you weren't given the tools, like you weren't even held by culture. You didn't even know that you could trust your body, and you had a doctor telling you he could do it for you better than you could do yourself. And then you trust that because that sounds convincing, and that sounds so worthy of trust, because it speaks as if it knows. It speaks with, you know, knowing. And in your cyclical ways, you speak questioning. You go like, I know, but do I? I know, but do I? You know? And then again, we see that lack of continuity, because then when we're birthing ourselves as elders in the postmenopausal phase, then again, it's like, I know, but do I? So maybe again, I'm going to just repeat what culture wants of me. And I'm just going to try to keep myself young because that's what's valued. And I'm not going to show myself as the wisdom that I am, because actually, you know, do I have any? And then, so then in that, we are robbing and then bringing bringing the context that you said. And that's the why of these conversations, because they have to be had here in the finding out of this relationality of like, so if we have forgotten our ways, which we have, and women have been trying to remember their ways in women's spaces, but if we don't bring this into here and we don't do this, how can you include this in your thinking and in the ecology of practices in the religion that's not a religion, because it needs to be taken into.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, So let's see. And for me, I was going a little too fast. Like something wanted to come. It was very excited and it wanted to come out, and it was going a little too fast. So let's see. Okay. What we're talking about is this thing. Well, I've been calling it the hyper conversation, but this is slightly different. Whoa, no. We're talking about the feminine hyper conversation. Yeah, something like that. So let's see. We've lost continuity. That's that. We've lost continuity. There's very little of deep feminine wisdom that can be transmitted with integrity, like with real learning, step to step. But we do have experience, and we have lots of people. And if we can have real conversations, as you say, and this is maybe a weak version of the example. Okay. Can I put a few coals on the fire, brands?
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend, a woman, a young woman, but I guess she's older now. One of the things I actually said to her was, when you say things to me that are, let's just say, ideas or things, when you're using other people's words, it's almost always a mess. But when you speak from something that is just yours, it's almost always impeccable. And I mean that. I mean, mind-blowing, soul-shattering, wow, holy cow, that's insight, in the most meaningful ways. Because, of course, oftentimes insight into relationship. Here's what's going on with your daughter. Here's what's going on with your wife. Here's what's going on with you, in a way that is incredibly opening to making things better, right? You know the difference. It's not so good to be told what's going on and been leaving you stuck, but to actually create an insight that is an opening to growing in a very positive, yearned for way. Yeah. And this is the interior. Like, just, I feel this, and I will just speak what I am feeling directly from my first person experience. Oh my gosh. Wow. So powerful. This is what I say. You know, I am at war with ideology, and I'm at war with ideology, particularly in the context of the feminine. You know? To the degree to which you're in a conversation with other women about childhood, and you are exchanging symbols from ideology space, which external authority said what, where, who, which teacher, like what doctor, right? That's a real distraction. Like, it's actually a real mess. To the degree to which you're actually trying to feel your own interior experience and allowing each other to orient towards your inner authority. And then by virtue of whenever you feel the tone of your inner authority, it speaks, and everyone hears that. They hear both what it says, but also the speaking. So they learn more of their own. That becomes a reciprocal opening of the strongest tone. And more of that, and more speaking from inner authority, hearing that, learning more how to do it, and what is said.
No, I love that, and that really resonates. And like what this brings to me, what this says to me is like, how many men could I engage with? And then brings me again to why I invited you, and why I invited not just you. You know, I had a conversation with Layman, and I'm choosing some particular people because I'm like, you know, and there is the story that Daniel Schmaltenberger talks about the value of the whale. You know, the whale is more valuable dead than alive. You know, I keep bringing this up to some people to make it tangible, because we forgot. And women, me, I forgot. So even though I remember things, I actually, if I don't see it in the world ever, like I don't see much. So therefore I forget it is of value. And then because I watch these conversations and they're so brilliant and they bring a lot of intelligibility and intelligence to the space. And actually, also, not only that, these are the guys doing stuff, because the energy is not just in talking and communing, but then it's like, let's do this. Let's create the religion that's not a religion. Let's create, systems and whatever it is. I'm like, wow, we stay in this very important terrain, which is like the nuclear, the relational, the tending to, I make the lunch boxes of my children like from scratch every day, wake up early, and because I want them to think clearly. So the nutritional value, all of that, where is that? That's so invisible. All of it is so invisible. And therefore, in this lack of continuity, it's not present in the conversations of the public. And I think if I think about what I have been trying to master, and I haven't mastered, but I've been trying, is like to make that which is invisible more visible, so that different minds can understand what I'm trying to point to, because it's been really tricky to point to what I'm trying to point to. And
Yes.
Over the years, if I think of when I started clumsily trying to point to that which I'm trying to do now with many years, and I just couldn't understand why it wasn't being heard. I truly didn't understand. I was like, what is it? Like, what's going on? Like, it's so clear, and it wasn't clear, obviously. So I had to learn, it's not clear. Okay, that's not clear for the majority of people. Okay. And when I speak like this, most people don't understand. Okay. So I had to understand the language that is being spoken and is being heard and is being understood, and try to make that which is unspeakable or invisible, and the energy that's contained within the birthing process, and the energy that's contained within death and gestation and all of that, and bringing that which is kind of sacred into words, which doesn't work, but trying my best. And in these conversations, trying to meet and hopefully making more and more edges visible, so that participation can happen. Because my fear is, and it's true fear, my true fear is that if I don't do that, not just me, if that's not done, then no matter how I initiate my daughter into the beautiful being that she is, she'll forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband, and then the way she'll participate in reality will have to be from this contracted place, trying to meet reality where reality is at. And I'm saying, so I think, so it brings me to just one more thing, and then which is, it's an invisible agreement, but I sense that with you, and I sense that with Layman, which is, I feel that you can feel what I'm pointing to, and therefore it relaxes me into being this. So then I can show up without having to excuse myself.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe a small piece, like a small reflection back. Some point in time in this conversation, not sure when, back here, there was emotion coming up. Your voice began to catch with emotion. And I remember when I was in law school, Harvard Law School, there was a woman who was feeling a lot of emotion, and her voice began to catch. And she had to excuse herself because Harvard Law School, not appropriate, at least so she thought. And maybe she was right. I don't feel that now, so for sure. And there's something about you being able to show up through all the things and to bring your fullness into this context that is the whole point. And that emotion is part of it in a big way. So if that's what's happening, that's what's happening. It's important to listen to it. So there's something there, right? To actually say, okay, yeah, I honor you. And so I'm here to my whole responsibility is to try to perceive what it is that you are difficultly trying to bring. I call this rule omega, but it's even clearer in this context. So maybe there was a little bit of something that I think that you were saying.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, that's even in a, like, as you were saying, that it goes from the concrete to the subtle to the very, very subtle. Because if I have to contract my body, like even on a concrete level, if I feel embarrassed of, you know, my cyclical nature on a very concrete level, and young girls do. So that's like, it starts tainting the psyche and in all sorts of ways. But then in a subtle level, it's like the emotionality, I mean, that is that which is like picks up. I mean, I can distinguish, I couldn't before because I was so apologetic of it. I remember as a young woman going to work and just praying that I wouldn't cry in front of my boss, and just and the amount of muscles I had to contract. Imagine trying to think clearly, just like with that much effort going inside. So that's one thing. But then, so even on these levels, to just relax that aspect of me. But what that does is that puts me in a dispositional state in which more subtle capacities and more like transpersonal and more insight can come. Because if I'm just contracted in so many ways, then these conversations, they stay in the level of performance, in trying to, you know, the first time we met, I said to you, I asked you, I was like, is it okay if I check in? Like, if, and you said, yeah, totally. And I cried. I don't know if you remember, like the very beginning of us having a conversation, I cried, and I tried to explain to you what it was, and I said, now I'm gonna cry again. No, it's not here yet. It's just here coming up. Which that feels to me, it's beyond me. If what it felt to me, what represented to me speaking to you, was it represented the meeting of worlds. It's like what you represent, what you're trying to bring into the world, it's gonna meet what I'm trying to bring into the world. And that felt relevant because, and I could feel the emotion of that meeting, because to me it represented like openness in creativity. So like you know, in like, I can go really like broad and go, imagine if women were feeling that relaxed in the presence of men, and that their cyclical nature was felt, understood, and received as, and their archetypes that they're embodying in each moment would be harnessed by the moment with intelligibility from the woman and whoever they're speaking with. Imagine the creativity that's possible in that. Like what models and financial models and whatever can come from that. And now they feel really squishy to me, because it doesn't feel like everything is participating in its conception.
Yes. Yes. I would so what is this? Bow? Yeah, neat. The visual images of a bow, but it's two things. It's a harp and a bow. So simultaneously pulling a string that has a tone and also firing something. I don't know. But this is a hard thing we're talking about. So it's good. Let's put it to the front. Also, to say it another way. This catastrophe is a real catastrophe. It is a real, seriously bad situation. And as you know, because you've been listening to people like me and Schmachtenberger and now Indy Johar, it's seriously not going to keep going this way. It's terminal. Right? We're on a train heading to a cliff, and there's an end, and not so long, maybe 100 years, maybe 10. Right? Not things are going poorly in certain places. Okay, what's the point? The point is this: we actually have to do the hard work of a comprehensive redesign all the way down to the basic code. That's just what's up. That's just where we are, right? That's the proposition I live. And this is the the thing that I say, but it's also the proposition I live. And what you're bringing is the compass. It's the direction. It's the thing, the orienting basis. It's the axis mundi. It's the thing that allows us to understand, how do you say, oh, if I'm going to unmoor us, we're going to redesign. Is it just chaos? Oh, what do we do? In fact, not at all. It's actually very simple. There's actually a natural direction. There's an instrument that tells us where to go, and it's obviously the most important thing. Build everything around that. Designers, build everything around that. Build an entire globe, a whole planet that takes it at its very beginning. The young girl, the moment of conception, the choice to conceive, the context of development, the relational context that development happens inside of, the spaciousness in which the relationships unfold, all of that. That's the direction. Those are your marching orders. Go. How? Well, we have to finally, I play with a puzzle. Part of me, I have a petulant part for sure. Part of me is mad that this journey of feminism spent 3 generations and the great last sort of abundance that we had, taking women down almost a perfectly wrong path. Instead of learning all the things that we're talking about and doing them very deeply and re-grounding them and sharing them, we end up saying, no, in fact, get a cesarean section so you can go back to being a vice president of marketing and leave your kid at don't even parent your kid. Perfectly upside down. Not feminism in the least bit. Not honoring the feminine at all. Okay. Here's the good news. In point of fact, women do have a lot more power in the world. So maybe we can choose to go down the path of a proper, actual feminism. Maybe not an ism, right? Feminine, re-feminine. To valorize the feminine. And to bring it to its proper place, by the way. To its just to restore it to its proper glory. But that's the work, right? There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And can I say 2 more things? I'm sorry, many words are coming out, but one thing that dropped for me about 2 years ago was, it is very important. It is maybe the deepest thing, and maybe the deepest thing for a man to get. I'm not sure about that, but the deepest thing, to recognize how critical it is to be forgotten. Right? We live in a world where to have your name remembered for 1,000 years is supposed to be a good big deal. Now, I tell you something. The world's very old. 1,000 years, it's never happened. So who gives a fuck? If your name is forgotten in 5 minutes, 2 generations, or 10,000 years, didn't happen. Because it gets in the way. Aspiring for that, and even the least bit, completely gets in the way of properly living. So that's one. So when you say the invisible, also the unseen or the forgotten, not forgotten, felt, properly honored, right? If we live in a world that is actually real, healthy, wholesome, the fact that you are doing that work to make the great lunch so that your kids are living good is like, really known, like deeply known, in the only place that matters, right? In the lineage and the generations and the echoes of how life actually ripples through time. So this is a piece, right? I would like to take that mirror, the notion of to be known, to be famous. I'd like to just really get that out of everybody's expectation. This is you remember you were in Europe, yeah?
No,
no, you were in Brazil.
Australia. I'm Brazilian.
Australia. Holy heavens, you're all over the place. Okay. I remember going to a museum, I think in Italy, and seeing old paintings, very old. And in particular, noticing a point where they weren't signed. And this is the medieval period. And I remember for the very first time being brought to my consciousness that there was a consciousness of the artist at that time they weren't the creator of the painting. They were merely an extension of the brush. That God was the creator of the painting. And they would be the most blasphemous thing to ascribe their name, to want to remember it. That's not the thing. Live right, allow the divine to express itself through you into the world and bring glory into life. And that's it. That's all that you were here to do, and that's all that you could ever hope for. And it's glorious. To hope that your name will be on a painting that somebody 50, 100 years from now will say, hey, that guy's pretty cool. How adolescent is that? It's absurd. So that's a part of the thing that I think maybe is woven into this.
Did you say that you wanted to say one more, or that's it?
Yeah, well, the other one is almost like me just ping ponging it back, which is I really feel your work. It's the the boys are out here. We're doing our Tinker Toys. We're chit chatting. We're sort of spinning our wheels a lot too, because well, that's not true. Let me say it a different way. We're doing good stuff. We're doing our best. And of course, you were invited, but you've got more important things to do. I mean, to recover that wisdom which has been lost, to create and to be able to say, here's the things, like even just give us a million women who know how to actually listen to their inner authority and speak it into a space without resentment, and to actually help us know how we can help to create the space to allow that to flourish. That by itself, sine qua non, I'll say. Nothing that we do out there is going to make the least bit of difference if that isn't already done. But the other side as well, more of that makes everything else that, say, folks like Daniel and I and Johnny B are doing, well, it makes me want to come to work every day. It's not so easy. But it makes it possible. It's very weird. Yeah.
I think a few different things came up, and the ones that I still hear. When you're talking about the name being preserved into, the future. Yeah, I think that for women, it's a different thing. I don't think that's a thing as much. And I think that almost there is an inversion of values, almost as if like men have to have less of that and women have to have not more of that. It's not the name, it's more the outer. It's one coming into the inner and the other one coming into the outer, because I feel that we're in a place in history in which to meet the outer drive of the masculine in men, they go out and then they go out and meet and talk and create, and the inner of women to heal and nurture, they need to meet, because the outer world has forgotten. I mean, we don't live in little tribes, so we're creating things together. We're a global tribe, and as we create the tribe, we need to meet. So I can't just stay in my corner doing my things. Thank goodness there's a bunch of women out doing that. That's the beauty, is that, but the information doesn't go. Like if I don't come out, so I came out of my little tribe and said, okay, you guys stay here. You're doing your work, beautiful work, stay here, initiate girls, remind women. And then I'm walking over here to the bridge and going, okay, let's us talk, because, and then I bring this information down here, because what happens is that in some contexts that I inhabit, the women don't listen to these conversations. They're not interested, or they say, there's too many words, I can't quite understand, it's too much. Then again, they cycle in themselves and they think they're stupid or they're not intelligent enough, because the frame tends to be self-defeating, as opposed to maybe they don't explain well enough to me. Maybe that's never considered, like rarely considered. It's more like I'm not good enough to go there. And I'm saying, no, we're all good enough. Let's stop this. And let's have different criterias. And the criterias, or the category era, to bring you again, is that what women have been measuring themselves onto is not what they have of that like their best value is not that which has been valued. So we need to together, men and women and people that are having these conversations need to work things out and go like, okay, so I'm going, okay, so for example, when I hear ecology of practices and I listen and I hear what they are, and I mean, John said something like, what did he say? He said something like, he mentioned maturity, like to be able to face reality, which I love, but also I'm like, well, as cyclical beings, if we're not in tune with our cycles, we're not able to face reality. We have been disconnected from that, and disconnecting men from that reality. So in the relationship, there's a gap. So that needs to be included in the ecology of practice. I'm sorry.
And just so we're clear, from the metaphor, it's the foundation. Right? It's not just a piece, it's the actual foundation. So the whole house is not going to stand if you don't get that foundation strong.
So that brings me to a question to you then, because you were talking, it was at the very end, I think, a conversation with John at the Jim Rohn podcast, and you were talking about, I think you were talking, I was making notes, I was like there's many things there that I would love to explore, but I think at the end you were talking about Civium, and you were talking about something like the I, the we, and our relationship to nature, like something like that. The pillar is that, I don't know. Can you talk a little bit more about that in this context? I don't know if it makes sense.
Can we put it into this context? So instead of putting it in memory, just like let's address it like now between us.
Yeah, bringing into this, yes. The me, so you're talking the me, like in this case, me and you individually, then the we, and then the relationship to nature. You talked about these three pillars, and you're saying, you were saying now that the feminine, maybe, I don't know, but correct me if I'm wrong, there's foundation, and this foundation would reverberate in the I, or be experienced as through the I, the we, and of course in our relationship to nature. So maybe I'm gonna ask you if that's making sense, and how would you maybe frame that? Because when you say to me that's the foundation, I'm like, okay, I love that, and at the same time, like, okay, so then what do we do? Like, how?
Okay. Well, let me start at a small example, which I'll use my small example, which is my family. So Vanessa has an ecology of practices, carefully and with real effort. I mean, for me, like, holy smokes, much more than I could even venture effort to allow her to recover some fraction of her inheritance as a woman, to go through the process of being pregnant and to go through labor and to go through being a mother has been a very powerful tool. In fact, of course, it is the most powerful tool yet devised by the entire universe. And we were lucky. And we got lucky that I was able to say, okay, to the extent that I can create a circle, a sphere, where you can go through that process as consciously and completely as you choose to, that was available. Of course, COVID, by the way, threw things for a loop, but that was true for everybody. But so many things, she went for a whole period. This is good. I don't know how long, months, where she was doing a conscious practice of the phrase was, I'm thinking with my pussy. And we actually had a trip to New York City. And I said to everybody, hey, I'm bringing Vanessa. I'm only meeting with people who have a significant other and where the significant other is willing to meet. Right. So if you don't have that, I'm not meeting you. So we had 8 meetings. And in every meeting, and that was the primary, me and the other man were the primary original relationship, right? So the significant others were kind of along for the ride, but we're going, having our chat. And then at a certain point, the conversation was like, Vanessa, what is it you've been up to? She's like, well, I've been thinking with my pussy. And the conversation dropped. Like the woman who had kind of been, politely leans in.
Mm.
Almost sometimes you could almost see her take her hand and like push the man out of the way, and poof, right, something opened up. And what was nice was that in 8 out of 10 cases, the man and I actually had this very interesting thing, like relaxed. My woman is getting something she actually desperately needs. That's good. That's better. Yeah. So that's lots of practices. And you guys, there's a whole industry out there, the journaling and all kinds of stuff. A lot of it's performative. A lot of it's capitalism, right? Okay. That's a lot of noise. We have to get really good at helping people know what is right, separating the wheat from the chaff. Right? It may be the case that oat milk is actually not good for you. Be careful. I'm saying that's an example. It's true position. It's also an example of the whole, thing. And we live in a market where unfortunately it's a lot of noise. But ecology of practice. Okay, good. Next. So now that she has that ecology of practices, and she has things like rituals, actually binding cycles that happen in nature, like spring and winter and night and day, and her own physical cycles, right? They link, and they're explicit, like we know. Our little one has a we call woni, if you know this word. Yoni, woni. So our little one will sometimes get herself a woni pad because sometimes mom has a woni, a pad. And so the 3-year-old will come to me and she's like, hey, I've got a woni pad in. So there's nothing hidden about this, right? In our family culture. And so there's a foundation. Even in the chaos of the last several years, I can turn and I can say, okay, let's activate. We need to have a conversation about something meaningful. Let me know what you need to do and how long it takes for you to be in a place where you feel like you can really hold that. But she holds it. And if we're having a meaningful conversation, she holds it, and she has to be honest, because she can't just snap her fingers. Are we there? Not yet. What needs to happen? These things need to happen. Let's create that context. Now we're having a meaningful conversation. And she may actually decide that some rituals have to be in place. Maybe this conversation needs to be, first we have to reconnect as a couple before we can have a meaningful conversation. Maybe we need to actually have conversations about other things that need to be out of the way before we can have a meaningful conversation. Fair enough. I don't understand that. I'm a very simple being at best. So that's a lot. I think about that foundation, getting those things in place. So everything is in the right order. All the important things are well held. The context is solid. All the pieces are there. And now the meaningful conversation can actually be had. And what I notice is, as you say, it's very powerful. And she'll have an insight. And I say this is insight, meaning it's almost like eyes and ears. Like you can imagine the epiphany of eyes to suddenly have ears say, sounds like this. And the eyes are like, what is this? Sounds like even, whoa, sounds like. Right? When she has an insight to me, it creates a whole new dimensionality of reality that I wasn't even aware that I was not aware of. But of course, as soon as she says it with that tone where I can hear, she's like standing, stolid. Oh, speaking of which, everybody's coming home. It's almost time for us to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And then we can make the best choice we can make. And recognize, we're limited beings and the world is very complex, but it may be better than a worse choice for sure. I'm very aware of how bad my choices can be. Best choice is better than worst choice. Now build that up, expand that. Friends, communities, whole cultures. And that's the fabric all the way up. And I'm not kidding. I'm not at all kidding, not the least bit. That stuff at the bottom of that foundation, sine qua non. It can't do it without that. Hi guys. Yeah, come on in. We're just gonna wrap up.
Yeah. Totally. No, it's beautiful. And it's a good place to close. I'm gonna kind of leave it in the air that I'd love to have a sequel at some point, like later.
Maybe
To
not a year and a half later, maybe even sooner
no,
than that.
no, much sooner. Because what I'm recognizing as I hear you speak is like, hi, hi.
Hmm?
And what's your name?
Eloise.
Eloise.
Eloise. Oh my goodness, beautiful name. Did you have a good
His
day?
name is Adriana.
I'm Adriana.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the perfect ending. I mean, things talking about, bringing it back to what's relevant. That's the perfect ending. We can end here, and then, yeah, we can build on that in another conversation. But yes, thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you for today. It was beautiful. Bye, Eloise.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Jordan.
Bye bye. Talk to you soon.